Galaxy S20 review. Overhyped and outrageously priced. I really wish they called it overhyped and overpriced, but maybe they're going on something different that I don't know here. The 120 hertz screen is the best feature, but it's also for sale to other OEMs. Samsung never changes. The company's flagship smartphone strategy has always focused on designing for marketability rather than the end user experience. That is a great way to label this. The company's flagship smartphone strategy has always focused on designing for marketability. Again, like I said earlier, dick measuring contest. The biggest this, the best that. It's like trying to show yourself off to a date so, you can get her home or whatever. Yeah, that's my analogy. So rather than the end user experience. So, you got all that talk, but what's the end user experience going to be like? And the result is always devices with gigantic spec sheets, dick measuring contests, gimmicky new features, and questionable user benefits. If it demos well in a Verizon showroom or helps win an internet spreadsheet comparison, toss it in. The Galaxy S20 is the latest paper tiger from the company, and this cynical approach to smartphone design oozes from every IP68 rated pore of Samsung's new flagship. Again, the way I feel about it, it's a big marketing contest, and you don't have the results to prove it later on. So the user ends up spending $1,000 or more, right? The Ultra at $1,400, and then they come home dissatisfied, and now they're selling it on Swappa. This is something that we've been talking about, like in my tech chat or whatever, for a while. Just look, but not too closely, at all the whiz bang features the Galaxy S20 offers. The camera has an industry leading 100 times zoom. It's actually a 4 times optical zoom, and the camera autofocus is terrible. There's 120 hertz. There's a 120 hertz 1440p display. You can't actually run the display at 120 hertz and 1440p. And who could forget the revolutionary 5G connectivity? 5G is probably not available in your area. The Galaxy S line is bigger than ever this year, and each model comes with Samsung's biggest ever price tags. The phones now start at $1,000, with while the bigger Galaxy S20 is $1,200 and the even bigger S20 Ultra is an astonishing $1,400. Samsung wants more money than ever to take home a Galaxy S20, but that does not translate into better support from Samsung after the sale. The Galaxy S20 is still only eligible for 2 years of monthly security updates and 2 major Android OS updates that Samsung will deliver as slowly as possible. For $1,400, that's a pretty bad deal. So yeah, the 2 year thing it's kind of a punch in the gut for a lot of techier people. I think a lot of average consumers probably aren't going to care. They're going to be fine with what they get. But yeah, you're paying a lot of money for, not the longest support, especially from other phones, like, getting 3 years of updates, OS updates from a Pixel. Um, is it 3 years OS updates from a Pixel now? I'm losing my mind, guys. So anyway, again, you're paying a lot of money and you're not getting a lot in return. So design and build quality in terms of construction, there isn't much here you haven't seen in past Samsung devices. So I will say, even before reading through this article, the thing I like about Samsung is, yeah, they have an awesome display, and I think their build quality and I think their design is pretty good. Um, I think their hardware comes in very top notch. Their software experience is lacking, and their cameras, at least in my experience in the past, have been pretty solid, but they're not leaps and, leaps above other flagship phones that are out there. And now when we're talking about marking it up at these prices, like, people are going to question it. People are going to dig down, and they're going to, like, be looking at these phones with a fine tooth comb, because you can't, at that price, you're not overlooking it anymore. Now, you're not overlooking the bad things on a phone or the questionable things on a phone, because if you're paying this much money, you better make sure that it's every penny, like, well spent. The front design is the usual Samsung template, because obviously this article's a little biased, right? They're pretty much hammering Samsung, and, like, I don't want to be that guy that's just like, fuck Samsung, everything they did is wrong here, because I don't think they do everything wrong, but there's a lot that they could do right. One of those things is not charge so goddamn much for the phone. So the S10 Plus had two front cameras and a distinctive looking oval shaped display. We know all these things. So I just want to see what his thoughts are on this phone. Speaking of things that have been removed compared to the Galaxy S10, there's no headphone jack anymore. Samsung was the biggest OEM supporting headphone jacks last year, but starting with the Galaxy Note 10, the company moved to kill the universal audio jack. In the flagship market, there aren't many headphone jacks left, save for maybe LG. The screen is still curved along the left and right, but it's less curved than it has ever been. Um, all content is meant to be flat, so why is Samsung bothering with this feature? It just seems like something that makes the phone look better in renders. That's also true. Fingerprint. So the fingerprint scanner hasn't been well received. Again, the in-screen fingerprint reader is the same component that shipped in the Galaxy S10, Qualcomm's first generation ultrasonic fingerprint reader, which is a disappointment. These in-screen fingerprint readers are new technology, and you would expect them to get better year over year, but there is no such improvement on the S20. So here again, they're going to pack these other features in, but they're not going to fix the elephant in the room, which is their fingerprint reader. You can say, well, you'll just use facial recognition, but that's not as secure, right? That's why you can't use it for banking and all that other shit right now, because it's just not as secure as what Face ID offers you on an iPhone. It's much smaller than a fingertip and smaller than any other touch target on a modern smartphone, which makes unlocking the phone more failure prone than it needs to be. That would be that would be frustrating for me. If that's how I had to unlock my phone and I was always having issues with it, that would end up being very frustrating where I would probably not use it anymore. Samsung is one of the only companies using Qualcomm's fingerprint solution, and one of the benefits of this component is that it's supposed to be able to scale up in size. Qualcomm says its fingerprint technology can be implemented under the entire display if an OEM wanted, and while that's probably prohibitively expensive, a reader area, at least as big as a home screen icon, would be appreciated. Right now, you are scanning a sliver of your finger instead of the entire fingertip. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all. Samsung has a habit of skimping on its unlocking biometrics, which is a shame. People unlock their phones dozens of times a day, so passing the security check is probably the most frequently used function of a smartphone. Again, this is something that I've hammered on Pixel 4, on the Pixel 4, because the Pixel 4 has issues with its facial or its face unlock. Again, not being able to, or unlocking your phone while having your eyes closed, is not a security feature that any of us want, and Google still hasn't fixed that. I think Will actually said to me or showed me something that said they were going to fix it or it's in the works, but goddamn, this phone's been out since what now? 4 or 5 months. Like, it's halfway through its life cycle and it's still not fixed. Like, that's how can you support something like that? That's so hard for me to wrap around my head. It's hard for me to recommend a Pixel 4 to somebody where I'm like, well, yeah, it has face unlock, but it's not the best. But you should buy it anyway. Kind of a hard sell. And then I'm left to say, well, just use a pin. Just use a pin. Let's go back to old school days and use a pin to unlock your phone. No. Okay, so specs here, whatever. The best and biggest addition to the Galaxy S20 is the new 120 hertz display. After spending most of last year supplying high refresh rates to displays to Google, OnePlus, and many other OEMs, Samsung is finally putting a speedier display in its own products. The 120 hertz display makes a big difference in how smooth the phone feels. I bet it's amazing. I really bet it looks great. But yeah, there's battery usage concern when running at 120 hertz. The display is the most power hungry component of any smartphone, and you'll definitely notice it draining the battery more quickly at the higher refresh rate. So for the camera, new on the Galaxy S20 is the massive camera bump on the back. This has got to be one of the biggest camera bumps ever, with its only competition being some of the crazier old school Nokia designs from the Symbian and Windows Phone days. Samsung lists the Galaxy S20 Ultra at 8.8 millimeters, but that doesn't include the camera bump, which by our measurements adds another 2.4 millimeters to the thickness of the phone. Okay, so big ass camera bump. I get it. I want to see what he says about the cameras in general, though. On the Ultra, the camera is branded with, quote, 100 times space zoom, a term Samsung felt so confident in it emblazoned the name on the camera bump right next to the sensor. Samsung's telephoto zoom ratings are completely divorced from reality, though. What's actually on the back is a 4x telephoto camera with a 48 megapixel sensor, and you have some room for cropping the photo and getting a digital zoom. Samsung claims the camera can perform a 10 times lossless zoom with the combination of the bigger sensor and the optical zoom. I don't really like the description of digital zoom as, quote, lossless, but I think Samsung means you get to 10 times before its AI photo algorithms start noticeably messing with your picture. The main 108 megapixel sensor takes much better pictures than the zoom lens, so if you can go for a walk and get closer to your subject instead of zooming it, do it. That's unfortunate to read also because it's pretty much telling you the telephoto lens isn't that great. So just use your main shooter. That's what I'm getting out of it. Samsung gets to claim its 100 times zoom is the highest in the industry, but at 100 times it is just awful to use. The scene in the viewfinder constantly ripples and wobbles with noise as Samsung's algorithms continually try to make sense of what the sensor is being pushed to focus on. The resulting photos look awful too, like blowing a regular photo up to 1,000% and smearing away the hard pixel grid lines. So autofocus, the big deal breaker for the Galaxy S20 camera is the autofocus, which doesn't work well and makes every photo an arduous process. Focusing when you first start up the camera out is slow, often taking a few seconds to find focus. Even then, the S20 often focuses on the background instead of on the subject, so I frequently have to tap the viewfinder to have it try to refocus on what I want. That autofocusing, reading that paragraph right there makes me not want to touch it at all. If they fix it on the regular S20, that's great. If it's still an issue on the S20 Ultra, I want no part of it. Because autofocus is such an important thing, it's pretty much when you need to take a shot and you need to take it right away, you want to make sure that autofocus is legit, not fumbling and hoping that the picture is going to turn out okay. The automatic focusing behavior is bizarre. The phone only seems to snap to a focus a second or Sorry. The automatic focusing behavior is bizarre. The phone only seems to snap to a focus a second or two after you stop moving the phone. This is very different and much slower feeling than something like a Pixel 4, which constantly smoothly adjusts the focus even when you are moving. This means it's common for the phone to want to try to refocus a lot in between shots, so it's common to take a picture, then have the camera realize it can actually focus a bit better and tempt you to take a second picture. No, fuck that. So the software, I'm not even going to go into the software because I'm my guess here, even though I don't own an S20 and the last Samsung I own is an S9, I'm still assuming the software is kind of a clusterfuck. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe I'm not. So performance, I'm sure performance is decent. So the 120 hertz display is wonderful. It's buttery smooth and an improvement over 90 hertz. It's just a shame it doesn't run at max resolution. The sticker shock, the price. The in-screen fingerprint reader is still the same tiny first gen sensor that was in the Galaxy S10. The cameras are a mess, focus is slow and frustrating, and you'll miss shots waiting for it to catch up. The overhyped 100 times zoom is a smeary mess of pixels, lots of crapware. So that doesn't surprise me, even on an unlocked phone, including unremovable Facebook and McAfee apps. These are unremovable Facebook and McAfee apps? No. Oh my God. The Galaxy S line was the last gasp for the headphone jack. With the S20, it's truly dead. The ugly. Samsung's typical terrible update policy looks even worse when you're paying $1,400 for a phone. Very long article. I just wanted to get someone's idea on how they thought of it. That article is very upfront, calling it overhyped and outrageously priced.